When my niece was little, I came up with the idea of inside treats. She was potty training at the time, and she wanted a treat. I said, "Ava, you already have a treat." She said, "I do?" I said, "Yes. Are you proud of yourself for going to the bathroom like a big girl?" She said, "I am." I said, "That feeling inside of you, that's an inside treat, and those are the best." She wasn't quite certain of my logic and still wanted her piece of candy, which I can totally relate to, because I was also rediscovering my need for internal validation. You see, social media had taken over my life. It had ruined and replaced my need for inside treats. I had come to this point where my life was being captured and used to feed other people. My life, my moments, my memories, my moments with my children, my thoughts had become something to feed other people's life. I was using my life to feed other people's feed. And in the meantime, I forgot to feed myself. But one day, a miracle happened. I woke up and my phone was dead. Or should I say, my phone was dead and I woke up. It felt like a fairy godmother had come into my land, and all of a sudden, the kind of cloudy, that feeling of having a to-do list forever long that I could never keep up with, all of a sudden disappeared, and I had nothing to do but be in my present moment. So for 30 days, I lived with a broken phone. And after those 30 days, my life was so radically transformed that I was determined to find a way to live without it. The freedom was so palpable, there was no way I could go back to living that other life, thinking the way that I thought when I was living through my phone. So I made a choice. I made a choice to live in my reality. I made a choice to spend my day collecting inside treats. I became a licensed marriage and family therapist in 2009. That was 2 years before the average adult had an iPhone, 4 years before the average teen had one, and several years before babies, toddlers, and infants had their own personal devices. This has given me the unique experience of living in a world where you had no phone. There was no phone over here, and then all of a sudden there was a phone. And that experience of being a human, a therapist, an expert in trauma, an expert in relationships, and a parent, in those two realities, made all of the stuff that I learned in school, that I learned with my life, had suddenly had nothing to do with this new world that we lived in. I started noticing a shift in my clients during this time too. So when I first started therapy, clients came to my office knowing what was wrong. They had a presenting issue. They presented it. We created goals together, and we worked towards those goals, and they got better. During this transition, all of a sudden, not just my clients, but my friends and my family kind of just started stumbling around thinking, something's wrong with me, and I don't know what it is. I've had this mild form of anxiety and depression. Everything's okay in my life, so what's wrong? I guess I need to go to therapy. And because I was doing this work on myself, I started thinking, could this be what's happening to all of us? Could everyone's phones be impacting their mental health the same way that mine was impacting mine? Could our phones be delivering all of us a slow drip of trauma? There was very little research out about this at the time, and I was determined to figure out what was going on. So I did as much research as I could on myself and on everyone that I knew. It's important to remember that before the pandemic, anxiety and depression were blanketing our adolescents. Suicide rates were at an all-time high. Eating disorders were consuming our girls. Parents, teachers, therapists, doctors were all saying to each other, guys, the kids aren't okay. And we blamed that they were spending too much time on their phones. But I wanted to know what was happening in those worlds that was so consuming us. what was happening to us? What was happening to our minds and our bodies, the way we thought, the way we approached life when we were in those worlds? And maybe most significantly of all, what wasn't happening in our lives anymore? What I learned led me to coming up with the term media trauma. There was no other way to explain what was happening. It was different. It was different than other types of trauma. And I kept saying, I think it's media trauma. I think that's what's happening. Thankfully, in 2013, a really great study was done on this by the National Academy of Sciences of America. They did research on the Boston Marathon bombings, where they found that people who watched the bombing through their media, through their own personal devices, were more traumatized than people who were at the actual event. Now, let that sink in for a minute, because that research was done back in 2013. Just give yourself a moment to think about how many traumas have you watched through the media since then? And the people who were at the bombing were not as traumatized as the people who were watching it. It has real impacts. It has real impacts that you don't just get to scroll past it and go to the next, funny meme, or the next heartbreaking story, or the next message from your friend. It goes somewhere. This is called vicarious trauma. And it interacts with our bodies differently than other forms of trauma, because I had a friend who worked in trauma in war zones. And she said, if you want to help people work through the trauma on the ground as it's happening, what you do is help them to ground in reality. So she gave the example of if you're in a car accident, you make yourself feel your fingers, feel your toes. You look up at the sky, you notice what the weather is, you see if there are trees around, you grab onto, might touch something, your body, your steering wheel. You're grounding yourself in reality, and that's part of the way that trauma is processed. You also have context. You have this big picture that you get to see that is more than the one moment that you're getting reported from. So there was a car accident in front of my house a few years ago, and I heard that just awful crunching of, metal. And that sent emergency chemicals through my body, because that's what emergencies do. But those chemicals caused me to run outside and go see what was going wrong. So I actually got the physical experience of the buildup of that energy getting released, because that's what emergency energy is for. So we get that kind of emergency energy when we're watching something happening so far away that we can do nothing about, and that energy just keeps getting trapped in our bodies. And that's actually the definition of trauma, is trapped energy. It's not just what we watch. There's a billion wonderful good things, and most of my experiences on social media were actually very positive ones. It's not just about what we're watching, it's about how we're using it, how we're interacting with it, and the expectations of our culture now of how consistently we need to be engaged with it. So it's about how our devices are designed. So if you, the pings and the buzzes that have just all become a normal part of life for us are like this constant tapping on us all the time. That's something that's just become normal. That's a slow drip of annoyance. There's also the business models that most social media platforms are based on. Those business models make money for how long your eyes are tuned into your screen. So it's not a humane business plan. The people who have the developing algorithms that are behind it aren't there for your mental health. And then the third thing is that this is kind of the most human of all of it, is now the expectations we're having around relationships with our family and our friends for how consistently available we need to be. One of the most common things I see in my office is parents who are consistently anxious, because until they know where their kid is, until they press that Find My iPhone, oh, I know where my kid is, okay, I'm okay, wait, they haven't texted me back. So there's this other human element that we've now have these expectations that are truly unrealistic for any kind of real relationship, but that has created in all of us it's normalized a sense of anxious attachment. I'm not okay unless I hear from you. I'm not okay unless I know you're safe. When I worked in that world, before the digital world, we called that anxious attachment, and we did work around regulating someone when they weren't getting the instant information they needed to be okay. Because what that does is that says, I need this to be okay, and that's not mental health. And yet our habits have supported that way of living. The truth is that all of that is media trauma. It's two small words for a lot of big things that have changed over the last decade. And our phones can absolutely help us solve problems, they can do a billion amazing things. But what's happened over this last decade is that we've been trained to go to our phones for all of our problems. I would bet every single person in this room, you have a thought. What time is it? What's the weather like? You don't even know what I'm hungry. We check our phones. I'm just gonna go to this as if it's the first. And my new favorite one is whenever my kids lose their phones, they're like, where's your phone so I can find my phone? And I'm like, you're even needing my phone to find your phone? Like, use your hands and your eyes and your memory. So you had it. You put it somewhere. That information is there, guys. So that's one of my least favorite things about, I shouldn't say that. I am so annoyed by seeing menus on phones. I don't like it. I don't like that I can't see the whole menu or compare foods, but that's how every restaurant wants to show their menu. And that is really the perfect picture. Like if I could wave a magic wand and I could change our relationship with our phones, it would be that we could start seeing it as the menu. Your phone is the menu. That is all it will ever be. It is not the meal. Real life is the meal. Our phones and all the ways that we hide behind them, which is so much of what we're doing, trick us into thinking we are getting our needs met. I saw that person. I know what's going on in their life. I know what the weather's like outside. That's not meeting our cellular needs. Our bodies and our brains and our souls know that that need isn't being met, but we're being tricked into that it is, and then you come to my office or to a friend and you're like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so lonely? Why am I so hungry? Where's my phone? Real life is the meal. Real life is the only thing that will satisfy you, because real life is what you were made for. Real life is what we were made for. So we've been trained to go to our phones for all of our needs, and this makes me want to ask you all, what needs do you have when you reach for your phone? So if you could slow down over the next, even just today, and catch yourself, like going to reach for your phone, and before you check it, pick it up, be like, what need am I really needing to meet? What's the real need here? I like to ask everybody what need they have when they get on social media, what need they have when they pick up their phone, and it makes people just find me an absolute delight at parties. But I want to see if any of the answers that I hear resonate with you. So if you slowed down and you took a moment, what do you need when you pick up your phone, when you check that feed? You need to belong. You need to make a difference. You need to know that you matter. You need to contribute. You need to fill a void. You need love. These are real human needs. They matter and they should be met, and there's a place for them to be met. I like to provide opportunities like this for people in real life to have these real moments of getting these real needs met. So I want you to imagine for a second a group of soulful high school girls who are learning how to listen to each other. So the assignment is that they're going to break into pairs, and for 60 seconds, one is going to talk about 3 things about herself. Just say 3 things about herself, while the other one listens without interrupting. 60 seconds. and then they switched roles. So the whole activity is 120 seconds. After we finished, the girls told me 2 unforgettable things. The first one was that they felt so vulnerable and exposed because they were not used to anyone actually seeing them without the chance to edit themselves first. They were not used to being in front of a person who got to see them as they actually are. The second one was that they all could not handle that much attention. 60 seconds of undivided attention, and they didn't know what to do with it. It overwhelmed them. And this became a really fun conversation for all of us, because what do you think they've been doing on social media for all those hours that they've been studying? What's going to be a good post? What do they want? Attention. They think they want attention. But what are the chances that that's created, that the lack of attention that we're getting in our human spaces are creating these voids that we're now going to feed these needs they can never meet? My daughter came home from high school. She came home from the gym one day when she was in high school, and she said, "Oh my God, I had the best day ever." And I was like, "What happened?" And she said, "I went to the gym and I opened the door for this man and his son." And I was like, "And?" And she was like, "They were so nice. Mom, they were so appreciative. It was the best." I was like, wow. Okay, so if you posted something on Instagram, how many likes would you have to get on that post to equal the feeling that you got from that interaction? Yes, my kids have to answer annoying questions like this all the time. She said, "There's no amount of likes. There's no amount. There's no number high enough for the feeling that I got." But she said, "Mom, you're asking the wrong question. It's not about how many likes. It's about how long it lasts. When you post something that goes viral, it's done for your next post. You go back to zero. You get reset." But she said, "What happened for me that morning with that man and his son, it's going to be with me forever. It builds up something inside of me that lasts." Inside treats are things that last. You get an inside treat when you compliment someone and you watch their face light up. You get an inside treat when you give someone a high five, when you smile at someone, when you make someone laugh, when someone makes you laugh. You get an inside treat when you let yourself be bored long enough to have a creative idea spark inside of you. You get an inside treat when you let yourself be still long enough that you connect to that still place inside of you. You get inside treats when you watch a group of girls who have been invisible realize they're being seen. Today, most of us are letting media influence us more than the humans in our life. How are you going to get your inside treats? Look at your life collecting inside treats. Give inside treats. Find inside treats and let those moments tell you who you are. Let those moments tell you about the world we actually live in. We have some really big problems in our world right now. But in 1,000 small ways, we still have a choice to heal ourselves and heal each other, one inside treat at a time.